Hello and welcome back for another VMK in the game development series. In this VMK, I'm going to show you how to create the class that is going to store all the material information that we're going to read in from a Caligari file. So let's get started. Going into Visual Studio here, in the previous VMK we created this Caligari file class which was responsible for parsing the Caligari file. And as it's parsing the file, we had a couple if statements here. Let's see if I can find them. We had, here we go, we have the if statement for whether we're parsing a poly H piece of data, whether we have material or a shader box. In this video, we're going to be focusing on how we're going to be storing all this material data that is going to be collected inside of this if statement here. You'll notice that near the top, we created this thing called CaligariMat1. And this is the class that we're going to be creating in this video. So to get started with that, let's go into the object library and create two new files. We'll create a CPP file called CaligariMat1, and we'll also create a .h file. Okay, starting with the .h. At the top of the file, we have our standard stuff with the if not defined, define CaligariMat1 _h. And here we can see the class definition. We have a constructor and a destructor. The constructor accepts an ID number, which will be the ID number that refers to this specific material, as well as the ID number of the parent that this material belongs to. We have four functions here. We have setMaterialID, so this is going to be the ID number that this material is currently working with. We have setSmoothing, which we use to set the smoothing angle for faces that are going to be using this material. And we have setColor, where we pass in the red, green, blue, and alpha value for the color of this material. We also have another function here called setTextured, which is just really a flag that tells us whether this material is going to have a texture associated with it or not. The actual texture itself is going to be handled in the shader box chunk, so in here we're only going to have a boolean that says yes or no whether there's going to be a texture. Down inside of the variable section, you'll notice that we have three public members. We have the ID number, the parent ID, and the color. Now notice something interesting here. I defined that the ID numbers are constant. I've never done this before in any of the previous classes for a game engine. This is, I think, the first time I've done this. The reason why I chose to do this is because I didn't want to create accessor functions to get this member variable out of this class. So instead, I created these to be constant so that they're public. You can go in and read what values these are, but you won't be able to change them from outside of this class. And because these are constant, there's a special way that you have to handle them inside of the constructor. So just be aware of that, or else you'll get compiling errors. Then down in here in the private members, we have the material ID number, the angle in radians for the smoothing, and the flag that I just was talking about for whether there's going to be a texture or not. Alright, so let's start off with the constructor. In the CPP file here, at the top we include the standard stuff, and then we have our constructor. And now notice what I do here. I pass in the ID number and the parent ID number, but you'll notice that I have a colon, and then I have the name of the constant variable that we want to initialize, and then in brackets I specify the value I want to initialize this long value to. So I'm passing in this value, which is whatever's going into the constructor, into this constructor for this variable. And I do the same thing for the parent ID number as well. If you don't do this way, you won't be able to compile your code. And I'll actually demonstrate this after I go through here and get everything written. We'll come back and I'll remove this and put it in the regular way, and just to show you what the compiling error is that you get whenever you try to initialize a constant value not using this technique. So anyway, inside the constructor we need to initialize all the member variables that are contained inside of this class. So the ID number we're going to set to 0, the smoothing angle we're going to set to 0, and then the color value we're going to set to that sort of gray color that we've always been using for all of our materials. And then textured we're going to say that is set to false, meaning by default a material is not going to contain a texture. Next thing is our destructor, and it doesn't do anything, so it's blank. And then we have set material ID. Here all we're doing is we're passing in a material ID number which we then save inside of our member variable. So nothing very special in there. Set smoothing is similar to set material ID, but this time we do a little bit of error checking in the sense that the angle here that gets passed in must be positive. So to ensure that, I just use the absolute function here to change this value to be positive no matter if it's positive or negative. And then I go and save it inside of the member variable like so. Finally, we have our set texture function, where we use to set the texture flag to be true if we call set textured. There is no way to set it to be false because we really won't need that functionality. By default it's false. So if we don't want to use a texture, we don't do anything. If we do want to use a texture, then we just call set textured, and then our member variable gets set to true. Okay, I think that's pretty much it for the class here. Let's go and compile it and see if it compiles successfully. Okay, everything is fine. Now let me demonstrate to you what happens if I try to initialize my constants inside of my constructor. Let's take these out here, and instead let's put them down here. Let's see, where are we working here? We're in the material. You'll also notice that inside the class view, the constant values have a different icon than the public or the private members here. You'll notice that the public members are just basically a blue square. Private members have a little lock on them so that they tell you that they're protected. And constant guys are like sort of this gray rectangle with two lines through the middle of it. Okay, so let me go and try to initialize my ID equal to the parameter that gets passed into our constructor like so. This is the way you'd think to do it normally. However, when we try to compile this, you'll notice it fails, and the error message we get is error 2758. This variable must be initialized in constructor base member initializer list. And then it just says, see declaration of this guy. So that's the error message that you would get, and if that's not clear enough in terms of how to fix it, you can always just highlight the error message number, press F1 on the keyboard, and that should bring up the Visual Studio help specifically to the error message that you just got. So here's the description of that error message. Must be initialized to constructor base member initializer list. And then it shows you here to do that you need to use the colon and then I with a bracket and then the value that you want to initialize it to. So this is the way you do it whenever you have the keyword constant in front of a member variable. And remember, because I'm doing constant, this means that from outside of the class I'll be able to access the member variables here because they're public, but I won't be able to change them. As soon as I try to change them and build my code, then a compiler error will show me that I cannot change this value because it's constant. So it's a little bit of a protection built into the compiler to prevent you from making a mistake. So anyway, let's just undo that and put the code back to how it should be and save this, recompile it, and that's pretty much it. If you're finding my videos helpful, and you can support my website, please do so by going to www.maticknows.com and clicking on the donate button on the side here to donate some money so that I can keep my website up and running. You can also help me out by going to the store and purchasing any items that are in there or getting a membership. Also, if these are not options for you, then you can also help me out by clicking on any of the Google ads on the side. And each click will basically help me out with a couple cents. So whatever you can afford, please help me out. I'm providing these videos for you for free. However, for me, they're really not free. I need to provide the web space, provide the time to put all these out for you, so if you can, please help me out. Alright, so this was a pretty short video, but it's important, so make sure you go through it and just type it all out and come back for the next video where we'll write the code for the shader box class.